Hello, everybody. Welcome to Starfleet Tactical. I am Chris Weave, as always, and with me, as almost always, is Pat Doyle.
Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well.
So, I hope everyone's not in Texas. There's a long discussion going on about how much it's not fun to be in Texas right now, but luckily everybody I know who's in Texas seems to be doing well, and so I'm very happy about that. So, first of all,
it's much colder here in Minnesota. I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah, you guys are ready for the cold. But I wrote stuff down, so I'm going to read the stuff I wrote down. First of all, nothing that Pat or I say is the opinion of any employer, past, present, future, in alternate dimensions, nothing, right? So that's our standard disclaimer. Keep that in mind. I have to write this down because my brother isn't watching tonight. He's busy watching either probably in the third Lord of the Rings movie right now at the theater he's at watching the marathon of the movies at. The second thing is next week we're going to plan on doing a thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
The next thing is next week, Pat and I for a while have been talking about doing a Q&A show. But one of the things that we were sort of adamant that we wanted to do is that we needed to announce the fact that we were going to do a Q&A show at least a week in advance so that people could think about questions that they want to bring to the Q&A show. So bring us questions about science fiction, about, maybe even about our day jobs, what it's like to be an airline pilot, that sort of stuff. And we'll do our best to answer them. So that's the plan for next week. So Pat, how was your week?
I had a great week. Stayed mostly indoors because, Minnesota and February. Put those two things together, you get
indoors.
You get indoor. You get a lot of indoors time. That's exactly right. So and otherwise worked in the simulator. Just normal work week. Pretty low stress week. It's actually been pretty nice, and nothing major to complain about. The worst thing I could come up with is a first world problem, and there are people with bigger problems.
Yeah, so it has been pointed out that Alec is alive and well. They're doing some foster puppy stuff this weekend, and so they're so. This week they're not available because they're traveling, as opposed to not being available because they have horrible internet until eventually they install good internet in their place. So yeah, I've got a friend of mine from high school lives south of you, but still within the metro area. And at one point she told me, she basically said, "Look, don't call during the 6 weeks of summer. We're busy." Because we only have 6 weeks of summer, and I'm not going to be home, and I'm not going to be interested in having a phone call. So, there's just so the 6 weeks of summer, don't call during that. It's like, oh, okay, that's fine.
I can relate to that. Yeah, I try to take my vacation, ideally January or February, because there's no good reason to be here. But it's delightful here in the summertime.
Well. And the other thing, of course, is that when you take a vacation, you go visit your parents usually, right?
Not usually, but I mean, I hadn't been for 10 years. I went last year to Brazil. Yeah, I visited them last year in Brazil. So this year, my wife is down there with our son, and they're visiting. But of course, my parents have, for COVID reasons, have decided to stay in Brazil. They normally come back. They go there for the winter, come back in the summer. After COVID, they decided not to bother coming back, at least not this year. So, all sorts of reasons and thoughts went into that. But I think they made the right call to stay on the beach.
Yes.
Well, I mean, consider at the time we were weighing the stability of Brazil in a global pandemic that we didn't know exactly what was going on. And, with things, law and order such that it is in Brazil breakdown versus here. And I got to say, I think they made the right call. So,
yes. Yeah. So that does sound good. I've always wanted to go to Brazil, and I've never done it. So,
yeah.
I've never been to South America.
Uh-huh.
The closest I've been to South America is I've been to a restaurant called On the Border.
Very good.
I actually like On the Border. It's a chain. I first encountered On the Border in when I on my the only time I spent any significant amount of time in Dallas. I went there for a quality engineering conference back when I was a computer geek. So I was a quality engineer for a while, and it was a training session on how to write test plans and stuff like that. So I know all about writing test plans. And it was in Dallas, and it was downtown Dallas. It was actually very close to Dealey Plaza. I didn't really realize how close it was until I was talking with some of the other people at the conference, and we decided to walk over to. We were like 3 blocks away, and so as you might imagine, there's a big memorial to John F. Kennedy there, and we're just sort of walking around, and it's like 10 o'clock at night, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just covered with tourists. They're pointing at the school book depository and pointing at this, and hey, look, there's the grassy knoll and stuff like that. And I remember just thinking, this must just drive the locals batshit. I mean, it must just really just annoy the hell out of them.
Yeah. But I can imagine.
So I got to see where the Kennedy assassination took place, and I got to eat at an On the Border for the very first time. So,
yeah.
So, but oh well. So I had a relatively good week myself. A busy week, a little bit frustrating here and there in places, but other than that, it was pretty good. Spent a lot of time doing some organizational things. I was telling Pat earlier that there was I changed my priorities in a few things, and there were like entire sections of my notebook that I have to-do lists in where I was like I don't need these 12 pages anymore. That stuff is no longer a priority. I'm putting it aside. So I will continue doing that tomorrow. And I spent a little bit of time doing some work-related stuff. I worked. Last week was a 3-day weekend, and I worked all 3 days of the weekend and put in about 10 or 12 hours over the course of the weekend. And I put in about 2 or 3 hours this morning, and I'm probably going to do another 3 or 4 tomorrow. I'm kind of getting tired of this working 7 days a week stuff, but I'm also, there are some projects that you really just have to do when strike when the iron is hot. Because it's like, okay, I'm in the mood to sort of wrap my mind around that. So now's the time. Have you ever seen anybody on Star Trek with a to-do list?
Do they ever see? No, but I think I've seen Cisco with just piles of pads on his desk.
Yeah.
And even in the episode we're going to talk about tonight, he talks about paperwork. So,
but whenever I see the piles of pads, the first thought that always occurred to me is tabbed browsers. It's like every single pad, they have to have a separate pad for every.
Well, I got to say, I have sat at my computer using an iPad, a laptop, and my desktop all at the same time.
Yeah.
Sometimes while doing, doing essentially schoolwork. And I've got 3 things going at once and stuff.
Oh, Bob points out that was Ashley Judd's character, if I remember correctly, right? Robin Leffler. Didn't she
Next Generation? Yeah.
Didn't she talk about having some to-do list scheme?
Maybe. She might have. I'd have to go back and watch those Next Generation episodes, but
yeah. Yeah, I think that sounds good. Yeah, okay. All right. So Pat and I were talking, as we often do, about what we should talk about, and we concluded that we should talk about an episode of DS9, one in particular. Although, if we got a little bit of time, if we run short on that, we can also talk about that other episode we talked about.
Sure. Or just do that in another day, if either way.
Yeah, depending. We got our options are.
Load that one in the chamber at least. Snapping a pen.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
Well, yeah. There you can just throw them around. Apparently, these things tend to shatter. So.
Yeah. So we decided that we wanted to talk about the episode In the Pale Moonlight, which is season 6, episode
19.
So did you I forgot to ask you earlier, did you put together any slides, or were you just gonna?
No, we're just chatting.
Okay.
I figured it was more productive to watch the episode 3 or 4 times over the last week and take notes.
That sounds good. So for those who aren't familiar with this episode, this is an episode that starts off with Sisko making a log entry where he says all sorts of foreshadowing things about, this is where it all went wrong, et cetera, et cetera. And then he tells the story about how he decided that they needed to bring the Romulans into the war against the Dominion, and that the right way to do that was to falsify evidence that
No, Garrick, that was Garrick's idea. All his idea is.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
That's true.
Garrick.
Yes.
Actually,
Garrick's
you know what?
It's almost a Garrick episode, really.
It is. Yeah.
Sisko was practically a spectator.
Yeah. Well, as it should be. I tell you what, I'm going to let you summarize the episode, because you've watched the episode. Did you say that you watched it like 4 times this week?
Yeah, I think I listened to it in my car and on YouTube. Doesn't mean I have it memorized, but listened to it in the car while
You're a lot closer to that than I am, so why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so basically in this episode, Sisko has determined he's tired of posting these casualty reports and all the deaths, and everyone in his staff talks about, hey, I know this person that's died, as they go down the list of names of the dead, wounded, and missing, and all that kind of stuff. And Sisko just realizes, and I think Bashir had mentioned early on in the episode, what we really need to do is get the Dominion get the Romulans in the war on our side. Then maybe we could go on the offensive. So good strategic advice coming from the Doctor. Usually the most idealistic of all of them. And that's where Sisko kind of decides, yeah, we need to get the Romulans involved in the war. And so he's pondering it for a little bit, and then he has a nice little discussion with Dax where they sort of play act. She plays the Romulan, and he acts like they're having a discussion about the whole thing. And basically she convinces him that they need to have proof of a Dominion attack, or a impending Dominion invasion of Romulus before the Romulans would ever get involved. So it evolves, and we see the thinking evolve and stuff like that. And so then he enlists the help of Garrick, as they talk about, hey, of all the people we know, who's most likely to be able to infiltrate something, get top secret plans, and get in where somebody wants them or doesn't want them to be, and possibly steal some stuff. So he talks to Garrick. Garrick says, yeah, you want me to go to Cardassia, sneak in, steal Cardassian Dominion war plans for the invasion of Romulus that may or may not exist, but won't matter because I'll be dead anyways. It's a suicide mission. I'm not doing it. And, so then they hit on the idea that, okay, well, use your contacts. You certainly have lots of people. Garrick says, okay, yeah, this would use up all of my contacts, but I want the Dominion off Cardassia too, so I'm willing to use up the contacts. But this is where Garrick warns them, says, this is going to be a very messy, bloody business. Are you prepared for that? To which his glib response is, I'm already involved in a messy, bloody business. I'm posting casualty reports, every week of dead, missing, and wounded. So So, and Cisco goes back and forth. He kind of runs the gamut of emotions from, okay, I really need to do this. I'll do anything I have to bring the Romulans in, to, oh man, I am just selling out all my morals and convictions and everything like that. And he kind of, and then he goes, and then he'll go back to, what am I quibbling over? I mean, here I'm just worried about a few niceties and stuff, and a bunch of people are dying. And then he goes, oh no, this was a bad idea. So Cisco goes through the whole range of emotions throughout the episode about what's going on and what he's thinking of doing. And so in the end, they settle on a plan. And Garrick, and by the way, if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend you shut us off and go watch it so that we don't spoil anything, because it's a very fun episode if you've never seen it before. So you got like 2 more seconds before I'm gonna start spoiling stuff. So anyways, they go on with the plan, and Garrett comes on the idea that, hey, wait a minute, we don't need to steal evidence. Let's just manufacture the evidence. And then he presents Cisco with a plan, basically. We'll invite a Romulan senator here to DS9 because he's already going to this other system nearby. And we'll have him over. We'll show him the evidence, and he'll take it back to Romulus, and the Romulans will be convinced, and and then we'll get the Romulans in on our side. And Cisco goes, yeah, brilliant idea. I like it. Let's do it. And he does get Starfleet's permission for this, for this plan. Now, Starfleet, and he gets this after they find out that Beta Z gets invaded. So that's one of the triggers at this point where Cisco's like, yep, that's the final straw. We've got to do this no matter what it takes. And so, but it's kind of Garrick's plan, right? It's manufacture it. I've got a guy, he can make videos, which clearly must be a very, very big skill in the Starfleet Star Trek universe there, specialized holodeck videos and stuff like that. So there seems to be illicit type people involved in that sort of thing. So anyways, he says he's got a guy, he can bring him over. So he hands Cisco a plan on a platter, basically. And what's happening, though, is that Garrick has a whole separate branch plan that's involved that Cisco doesn't even know about.
Really kind of the main plan.
And it's really plan A. Cisco thinks he's in plan A, but Cisco's is plan B. The one Cisco knows about is just plan B. Garrick's already now concocted an entire plan where we're going to lure a Romulan senator here, and we're basically going to frame the Dominion for the assassination of this senator. And really, it's Garrick that's going to kill him. He's going to plant a bomb on his shuttle, and get going, and then by planting the bomb on the shuttle, and this Romulan senator was at a meeting, was initially going to a place called Sukara, I don't know where that is, to meet with Weyoun to have some sort of diplomatic discussion. So the idea is that Garrick assassinates him, which makes it look like he was assassinated by the Dominion after the diplomatic meeting they had, and that'll make the Romulans really pissed. Meanwhile, they will have a video, or essentially a holodeck video, that will be on board the shuttle with them that shows the Dominion planning the invasion of Romulus. So what Cisco thinks is the plan is that they've got this video, they'll show it to the senator, he'll be like, wow, how'd you get this? Because it's on this, very specific data rod that the Cardassians make.
It's a write once device.
It's a what?
Write once.
Right. Yes. You can only write onto it once. They're highly secure. They're very controlled. You can't get these things anywhere. So that'll help prove its authenticity. And then he'll take that to the Romulan Senate. And the other thing is, this is kind of a Nixon goes to China thing. This particular Romulan senator is a big proponent of the peace deal or the alliance with the Dominion. So if they convince him, he has proof. It's Nixon saying, it's Nixon going to China, right? If the hardened, staunch anti-communist goes to China, then okay, well maybe there's some diplomatic things to do there. And so if this senator convinces the Romulan Senate that the Dominion's about to attack us, then they'll get involved in the war. They'll follow where he leads. So that's the plan that Sisko has. So he invites the senator on board. They have a talk. Sisko shows him the thing, tries to convince him, shows him the evidence, and the senator comes back and says, "Yeah, this is a fake. I'm going to expose you. See ya, I got to go." And he hops on his shuttle and leaves. So right before then, Garrick had told Sisko, "Hey, I'm going to sneak aboard their shuttle real quick, just to search for intelligence and stuff like that." So it's that point where Garrick is planting the bomb, not looking for intel or anything like that. Sisko, of course, is worried about him getting caught, and Garrick just blows it off like, "Yeah, I can get around those clowns, not a problem." So that apparently is not even an issue.
Yeah, it was funny. He said, "There's only 4 guards. There's only 4 of them. I can get around that."
Yeah, and 2 will be with the senator, so he can get around it. So anyway, so while Sisko thinks he's just searching for some intel on the senator's shuttle, Garrick's actually just planting a bomb. He's just sort of brute forcing it. I mean, and so the senator says it's a fake. He goes back onto his shuttle and he leaves. Now, Sisko, of course, is just beside, he's got, I would imagine this whole plan has sort of violated all of Sisko's morals and ethics and stuff, right? And then the plan blows up in his face. It has the potential of bringing the Romulans closer to the Dominion if it gets hosed up. He's gone to Starfleet Command and promised them Romulans on a platter, and now that's failed. So it's bad for the career. Could be, be portending the doom of the Federation, with the Romulans joining the bad guys. He's violated all his morals and principles, and so he's got to be really, really stressed out about it at this point. And then Worf comes over. He's at this little meeting or a little group with his crew. Worf comes over and says, "Yeah, Starfleet Intel just told us that a Romulan senator's been has been killed when his shuttle blew up." And he says, "Who was it?" "Oh, it was Senator Vreenak." And Sisko, and they were like, the rest of the crew's like, "Huh, well, this might bring the Romulans in on our side. It looks pretty suspicious. The Dominion may have assassinated him because he was at a meeting with Weyoun." And so, but Sisko now it's all come together. Sisko has been manipulated.
Sisko realizes he was totally and completely played.
Yes, he was completely. That is exactly the phrase I use. Played. And so I think if you combine all of that, I'm just trying to do a retcon here, I guess. If you combine all of that pent up frustration and stress of the last couple weeks, he has just failed. His mistake may have cost the Federation the war. His career is going down the tubes, all this kind of stuff. And now he's accessory to murder. And so at this point, he's just snapped, and he goes and starts to beat the crap out of Garrick. And Garrick's like, just chill for 1 minute here after getting punched a few times. And he says, the Romulans are coming in on the war, or the Romulans are going to come in on our side. And he says, it won't, Sisko responds, "No, they're not, because they'll see that it was a fake." And Garrick says, "No, any imperfections in the video is going to be attributed to the shuttle that blew up, on board. Yeah. And clearly it had to be just the right amount of explosive to not entirely incinerate the whole shuttle, but to kill everybody on board."
Well, and also not detonate the antimatter.
And not detonate the antimatter and all that kind of stuff. So Garrick is well placed to make that calculation. I
there are some weirdly precise stuff that happens in Star Trek. It's like frequently the writers will forget exactly what they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it actually is a much better plan. Now, in my mind, the question is did Garrick come up with that plan later, or was that the plan that he had in mind when he suggested the other plan to Sisko? It's just like, okay, the right way to do it is to assassinate the guy, but Sisko will never go for that, so I'll tell him this other thing instead.
Yeah,
and it's Garrick, so I think it's probably that.
If you pay attention to the nuances at the beginning, the plan evolves. So, even when you come up with a good plan, you didn't necessarily, that wasn't your first thought. It might be a couple steps as you do thought experiments on the consequences of different things. So,
right, but the question isn't whether he has contingencies. The question is whether Garrick thought of what ended up being the main plan, whether that was always the main plan.
Right.
That's the question in my mind. And there's that little line at the end about how when Sisko is dictating his log, where he says, I can't even talk to Dax about this. I was thinking about that. We talked about that earlier, and it's like, why can't he talk to Dax? I mean, Dax, he does that thing with Dax. Dax knows exactly what he's thinking because they had gone through and done that role-playing thing, and she's very smart, and she's going to go, huh, that's interesting. Benjamin?
Did you have anything to do with it? You've been talking to Garrick an awful lot lately.
But it occurred to me that actually the reason why he might not be able to talk to Dax is that he may have been said, like, you're the only one that's cleared for this.
Yeah, right. I'm sure Section 31 told Sisko not to tell anyone.
or whoever it was. But it seems to me that, boy, Starfleet was just like, yeah, we're just going to turn, an agent in the field came up with this idea, and we're just going to say, yep, sounds good, go ahead.
Yeah. Well,
a little bit.
One of their important worlds had just gotten invaded. It just got real.
So, in the real world,
all right.
In the real world, stuff doesn't just get done like that.
Well, no, everything's got to wrap up. You got a 45 minutes. I mean, this could be a longer movie. Yeah.
Understood. Yeah, yes. Except I disagree with that, because it's like that bomb was always going to go off.
Yeah.
The senator it wasn't a plan A, plan B situation, because there is no way to turn off plan B. Plan B is going to happen regardless.
Yeah. Even if the senator had thought, yep, I believe it, that shuttle was still going to blow up because Garrick had already put the bomb on it.
So we also talked earlier today about how dumb the senator was. Like the senator says, basically he says, I've caught you in this act. I'm going to go and make, I'm going to tell the entire universe what horrible people you are. And now I'm going to walk right past your security, right out of your station, and I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive away. And you're going to let me. It's like, why?
Yep. He might have that belief about Starfleet, though.
But so the right answer, Pat and I were in agreement on this earlier. The right answer is that it's like, yeah, it's a fake. And so this actually, in a lot of ways, this would work better. It's a fake. He knows it's a fake. He's not stupid enough to tell the people he's on their station, and he's threatening them, and he's not stupid. Yeah, I mean, at this point, he's basically like begging Sisko to just take a phaser and shoot him, because how could it possibly be worse?
Right?
How could it possibly get any worse? And so, the smart answer for the senator is to say, "Yep, I believe it. I believe it. Well, I'm going to go
on my way."
And Garrick, of course, is smart enough to know that the senator. Garrick is smart enough to assume that the senator is smart enough to just lie.
Yep. Yeah, but see, that might be, I don't know, that might end up being so nuanced. Oh, he believed him and they still killed him. Why would they do that? I'm just thinking in terms of.
Yeah, but Garrick.
But that's something Garrick would still do.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that, it's like when Sisko says, "Why did you do that?" Garrick said, "Do you think, first of all, I had doubts about whether we could pull it off, and second of all, do you think that this guy would be stupid enough to tell you if he didn't believe you? You'd just shoot him. You'd have nothing left to lose at that point." And so I had to do it this way because it's the only way we know that it's going to work. He probably figured it out because, my guy isn't that good.
Yeah.
He probably figured it out, and he was probably going to rat you out.
Yep.
Yeah,
and actually, the other thing is it was a secret diversion to DS9. Nobody knew he was there. He was really taking a chance because if he didn't tell anybody he was on DS9, they could have offed him and blamed it on the Dominion. They might not even have needed this plan.
So I just had this flash of realization. You know who Sisko reminds me of from the Honorverse?
Oh, what's that?
Ivers Terrakov.
Oh, that cap. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ivers Terrakov is the one when he's talking with the Sali general. He said, "Why do people like you always assume you're more ruthless than people like me?" just before he dropped a slug going at a significant velocity that basically cored the building she was in, and brought down a skyscraper with one shot from orbit from a mass driver. Why do people like you always assume you're more ruthless than people like me? That's my nomination for the single best line in the entire series, by the way.
The entire series, yeah. That's good. Yeah. So, some of the questions, some of it is, I think one of the questions in this show is, I think there's a couple things a couple rabbit holes to go down. One, do the ends justify the means?
Yeah.
And that's an interesting conversation to have. The sheer scale of the war and the sheer scale of the consequences of losing it, survival, that might, that certainly factors into it. The other one is presented with the similar situation. What would Kirk done? What would Picard have done? What would Archer have done? What would Janeway have done?
Janeway would have put the bomb on the shuttle.
Herself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
I think so too. I think Janeway's willing to do whatever. It's also funny because he's clearly he being Sisko's clearly upset about all this stuff, but this strikes me as the sort of thing that they have in Section 31 they have ensigns do. Yeah, I mean this doesn't strike me as being that over the top for Section 31, and from an ends justifies the means standpoint,
that is the Section 31's department.
It's dirty tricks, but the sum total of human history points to that trick being only sort of a little dirty.
Yep. Yeah, actually, I don't know if you can see this. I got this book, which is very interesting. Deception Tactics of World War II. You want to know how sneaky the Brits were?
Oh man.
I mean, holy cow. They make Carrick look like a Girl Scout.
Yeah. Yeah, the Brits are pretty impressive.
They were really impressive at that stuff. But the stuff they came up with in World War II, the Brits and the Allies just had the Germans so badly outclassed in that department, as far as I can see.
By the way, have we ever? I can't remember if we've talked about Christopher Lee when he made the Lord of the Rings movies.
No.
Okay, so Christopher Lee was in this special executive service. I think that's what they called it. So Christopher Lee was one of those guys.
Okay.
That's what his job was in World War II. And when Peter Jackson is directing him when Wormtongue comes up and stabs him in the back, and he says, "Okay, when he does this, make this noise." Christopher Lee's response was, "That's not what it sounds like when a guy's stabbed in the back." That's not the noise he makes.
Now that was the long white bearded guy. What's that? Oh, the bad guy. Okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah. So when he's up there and he gets stabbed in the back, Christopher Lee's response is, "Yeah, that's not what a guy sounds like when he's stabbed in the back." And Peter Jackson's response was, "Okay, then." Special Operational Executive, I think, is what it is. The SOE. Now, I said Special Executive Service, but it's Special Operational Executive, if I remember correctly. So, those loads of fun. But Christopher Lee was a real Lord of the Rings fan. Actually, he read the book. Read the series every year.
Okay, every year.
Yeah, that's what he claimed. He said he read it every year, and had forever and ever.
That's like a 2 or 3 month process if you're really dedicated, right?
No, it's not that long.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, just the Lord of the Rings, just the trilogy.
That trilogy.
So, on the audiobook version I have, it's 44 hours, and that's including all the appendices.
Oh, okay. All right.
So.
Yeah, I think the longest audiobook I've listened to is The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. It's like 50 hours.
Well, The Lord of the Rings is 44 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 44. It might have been. Yeah, it was 44, I think. Now I'm beginning to think that it might have been 52. In any event, War of Honor, the longest David Weber book, is 40 hours.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That was the first book in that series I read. I actually really liked it. A lot of people didn't. It wasn't until I read the earlier stuff that I understood half of what they were referring to, but yeah, and that book suffers from the problem that David Weber's writing style, his writing process, is that the last month before he turns in a book is editing, and he usually ends up cutting 10 to 15% of the book. Well, he remembered that the book was due in, I want to say it was April, but he had it in his head that it was like April 30th, and in reality it was like April 1st. And he found that out like March 1st. And so instead of having 2 months left, he only had one, and as a result, it never got its edit. And for reasons involving printer schedules and marketing and stuff like that, they couldn't push it back. Okay. And so he did what he could, but it never had its last chop out 15% of the book edit. Okay. And as a result, it ended up feeling a little on the bloated side. Gotcha. Okay, so Captain Picard in this situation, he wouldn't have done it. He always takes the high ground without exception. He always goes looking for the third option.
Yeah, and it's unclear to me what that would be in this case.
Yeah, I don't know what that would be in this case either. I don't know how Picard would have dealt with this. He always his third option always turns out to work. So when faced with two bad choices, what do you do? So.
It's almost like there's this controlling influence that determines what will work, and
like a higher power was on his side. Yeah.
Yeah, like a room full of higher powers. Word processors, or back then typewriters.
Yeah. So, Captain Kirk, I'm unclear if he would have done this. But yeah, I think you're right. Janeway, I think she'd plant the bomb herself. And
I think Archer would do it also, but he'd feel just as bad as Sisko's did. Yeah. But Sisko makes the comment at the end, and the worst part is, I'm pretty sure I can live with it.
Yeah, well, he put the whole thing at the end of it. He puts it all in perspective, right?
Yeah.
Getting the Romulans into the war, you're already talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions more people dying by getting them into the war too. but it might mean some of more Federation people live or something. Who knows? So he's already dealing with such vast numbers of dead and people dying and stuff in this particular war that he talks about entire planets fighting for survival and stuff. So so he's kind of finally put it in scale, like, okay, one person's problems don't really amount to a hill of beans, as to paraphrase Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, right? So he's just put it all in perspective in the end and said, yeah, okay, I feel bad. Who cares? This needs to happen. So
I need to rewatch Casablanca. That's I watched it not too long ago, like a couple of years ago, and it's just as good now as I remembered it being.
Oh yeah, I own a copy of the movie. I've always loved that movie.
Now, Maltese Falcon, on the other hand, I realized the last time I watched it, I don't like the Maltese Falcon. I like Peter Lorre and Sidney Greenstreet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But Bogart and the female lead, their characters don't make any sense whatsoever.
Mm.
In fact, she reminds me of Baltar in Battlestar Galactica, the new one. And
I haven't seen the Maltese Falcon in a long time, but yeah.
Yeah, because both she and Baltar lie in situations where it's in their best interest not to.
Yeah. Well, it's a habit for some people, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's like you don't get anything out of that lie.
Yeah.
It does not help you. It doesn't help you at all. And it's like, why are you doing this?
Well, isn't that the scorpion and the dog, or the scorpion and the turtle thing?
Yeah,
right?
It's my nature. Middle East, it's my nature. Yeah, so I guess that's some of it. But the Maltese Falcon just doesn't. Well, there's large chunks of it that don't hold together. But Casablanca is fantastic.
Yeah, and actually, Garak is a big proponent of lying, right? I mean, he just sits there chatting away with Worf. What was it? I think you should recommend me to go to Starfleet Academy. I would really love to do it. And he goes on with this entire story about how he'd love to become a Starfleet officer and all this kind of stuff. And finally, Worf realizes, yeah, he's just full of crap. He's just telling me, and Garak's response to Worf is, lying's a skill just like anything else. You got to practice. So
I'm looking it up. He said something when he heard the story of the boy who cried wolf.
The boy who cried wolf. Yes, I was just going to bring that up. That's the other thing. I mean, so Garak is one of my favorite characters in Star Trek, even though he's the antithesis of an awful lot of Star Trek. But he is one of the most fun and interesting characters.
Don't tell the same lie twice. He said the problem was that he didn't tell the same. That was
right. So the normal moral of Julian Bashir tells him the story of the boy who cried wolf, as he's as he's sort of talking to Garak about how lying is bad, and he tells him the story, and now nobody believes them, and he gets killed and eaten by the wolf. And Garak looks at him just perplexed, and he says,
"Thank you, Stephen."
What's that?
I was thanking Stephen Ross. Sorry,
oh, yeah.
I'm trying to slide that in without breaking your stride. I apparently totally failed. Sorry.
What was I saying?
Boy who cried wolf.
Oh yeah, so the boy who cried. Oh yeah, so Garak looks at Bashir and says, "You got that story all wrong. The moral of that story is don't tell the same lie twice." To which everyone shakes their head. But it's lines like that, and the other one, when I think the Dominion's about to take the station, and Garak is talking to Odo, and he talks about how he had considered shooting during the Klingon attack. When the Klingons had boarded the station, he had an opportunity, could have shot Gul Dukat in the back and saved them all the trouble that they're going through now. And Odo says, "You'd shoot a man in the back?" And Garrick says, "Well, of course, it's the safest way." So, but anyways, let's see here. So one of the things I kind of realized with this episode is that Sisko's out of his element doing this kind of cloak and dagger stuff. I think Sisko will break a rule or bend a rule here and there, but I think he is, probably compared to Garrick, most Starfleet officers are probably pretty naive. So Sisko probably was a little bit out of his element, and as he realized, he got completely played by Garrick. And let's see here. So I think I'm just kind of going through my notes, see if there were any other little tidbits and stuff like that. But but yeah, in the end, Sisko is essentially, he covered up some crimes. He is an accessory to murder on several accounts, I guess at least 6. We'd have the 4 Romulan bodyguards, the Romulan senator, and the guy who made the video for them. Garrick just disposed of him. I'm not sure what happened. And the thing is like, there's no search for the body. Nobody even bothers trying. We don't even know where, what exactly happened to him other than, yep, he disappeared.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they did.
I think it's in the end where it's towards the end where Sisko goes, what happened to him? And he's like, it's best not to talk about that kind of stuff. So, and he did arrange for biomimetic gel, which apparently has all sorts of vile, dangerous uses and stuff like that. And 85 liters to some criminal dude to go do that stuff. So it'd be interesting to find out what happened to that biomimetic gel somewhere along the way. I'm sure someone will write a whole novel about it, but.
Oh, I'm sure. And they'll tie it into like 5 different other things. I mean, that Star Trek novels always drive me crazy. The modern era of Star Trek novels always drive me crazy because you can't just take one episode and sort of like spin one episode. You have to spin at least 4.
If you ever watch or read the Khan novels, I read the first one. I read it like 15 years ago or something like that. And you know what? It was a fun read. It was definitely enjoyable. But they did, they tied in Gary 7 and Roberta and any other time travel thing that had ever happened or thought of, that anyone had ever thought of having happened. So it was pretty interesting. But like I said, it was a fun read. I'd recommend it to somebody as long as you don't get too wrapped up over it. So.
Yeah, I read the novel Immortal Coil, which has. All right, you get to go back, sit down if you're going to paw up my face. Which had Data's creator visiting the planet where they create the androids on the spinning table, and Flint, the Immortal.
Flint, the Immortal. Who's? Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
The one who was like Beethoven or Mozart or something like that, and all those other guys. Yeah. So they tied and some minor race of artificial life that I vaguely remember from one episode of Next Gen. And there was something else too. Somebody got cranky and was shooting at them, some other androids or something. I forget who it was. And it's like, any 2 of these ideas would have made a really, really long novel. And instead you guys did like a 200-page novel that had 5 of these ideas in it. So 250-page.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm just checking real quick to see if there's anything there.
Chris and I had possibly believed or possibly come up with the idea that it might even when Cisco notified Starfleet, probably Section 31 approved it or something like that. So, and the other thing is just how much did Cisco tell Starfleet? Hey, we're going to pull a little deception, maybe try to get the Romulans in. Yeah, go for it. Deception, that's not an unusual thing in war. He probably didn't sell it as, hey, we're going to assassinate a Romulan senator, kill some random criminal, and hopefully this doesn't backfire on us.
That wasn't his plan.
Right. Well, exactly. Right.
It does tell you though, if he said something like, hey, we're going to falsify this stuff, and all the alarm bells start going off, right? Because this is one of those things that if it fails, you end up with the situation that the senator talked about where not only are they not going to come in on our side, they're going to come in against us. And it's going to, there's huge propaganda effects and all the rest of it. And the fact that Starfleet's reaction was, yeah, go for it.
Well, and the point, I think it was timing also, because Beta Z had just been invaded. And they do point out, hey, since Beta Z just got invaded, they'll probably go for anything. So that's kind of, I think that's their way of, hand waving any objections that Starfleet might have had, or that any fans might not believe that they would have done. So,
that could very easily, that makes sense. And so somebody just said deniability. I'm not sure that matters at that point. It's easy to talk about deniability, but in the middle of something like this, it's still a propaganda coup. It's still going to work totally against them.
Mm-hmm.
It's
because if your entire federation, which is founded on certain principles, and it gets out that you have completely abandoned those principles, you're gonna peel away. You might not have a mutiny, but you might peel away 1 or 2% of support, and then you throw in a lost battle and another lost battle, and then support and stuff can fall away little piece by piece.
Well, the other thing is, do you really think the Romulans at that point, it's like, are going to go, well, I guess we won't come in on their side because it was just this guy out in Deep Space Nine?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound like the Romulans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so the Romulans are obeying the basic strategic principle, while your enemies are busy killing themselves. Don't get involved, right?
Yeah.
So, they don't like any of those people, and they just figure, we'll let them all beat each other to hell. I mean, probably not.
What a great idea. How about you and him fight?
Yeah. Probably not unlike Russia or Soviet Union versus Germany in World War II. So.
Yeah, that was definitely one of those, let's make some popcorn sort of wars.
Yeah, I mean, the scale of warfare on that, in that theater makes everything else just pale by comparison. So.
Yeah, Russia's really big.
Yeah. And I mean, even the numbers, casualties and numbers of troops moving around. I mean, they were moving groups around in the millions and hundreds of thousands and stuff like that. And, I don't think we saw that on the Western Front quite to that extent. So.
No, they took an area of Russia that was way bigger than France. And they also, German intelligence said that that you'd have to kill like 130 divisions, and they did.
Mm-hmm.
It was 130 or 230, I forget.
Yeah,
and they did. They just forgot that they can make more.
Right.
Yeah, actually, there is something.
The more about the real plan, the better. Yeah, I think so. That sums it up pretty well.
There's something to be said for the best reactions are the most authentic ones. So keep them in the dark.
Yep. So, well, that's about all I've got. I have an early morning tomorrow, so I think I will I will say goodbye to everybody. And I really like the idea, and forgive me, I forgot the name that came up, but the idea of going through Captain Archer and some of his character arc and story arc and some of the big things he did, because I think that is one of the more interesting. I mean, Picard pretty much stays the same, all the way through. But yeah, Archer starting off as the wild-eyed explorer and kind of comes out as more the, I don't know if bitter's the right word, but hard-bitten captain that he becomes by the end of it. So
he's not cynical, but it's like, oh yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah, basically at the end of the in the fourth year, he was like, yeah, I was look at yourself as a teenager, right? Naive. He thought he probably thinks of himself as having been naive. So Galaxy turns out to be a dangerous place.
Yes. So everybody remember, next week, come with your questions, and we'll try to provide answers on all sorts of things, Star Trek and others. We'll talk to you about what we can. I can't think of anything else right now, Pat.
No.
So I think it's about, we've had enough episodes where we've gone over. I think we can finish one or two early. So we're going to go a few minutes early. So
sounds like a plan. All right. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Good night, everybody. Have a good one.